Welcome, welcome, welcome. Well, folks, the future is here. Mr. Jonah Tong is now with the New York Mets big league team. And folks, I'm telling you, there's plenty to be excited about this kid. He is extremely special. Well, you know what, folks? We're going to talk about a lot of special details about this young man. Why Jonah Tong is here now? Why isn't Brandon Sproat picked? And what changed within the last couple of weeks? It's just so funny how things evolve. And if you go back to the trade deadline, the plan was Sean Manaea, Kodai Senga. These guys would be recovering. These guys would get better. And before we traded for our bullpen targets, maybe, just maybe, some of these kids would come up and be a part of the bullpen. But you know what? It depends how the market went. Market went how it went, and the Mets beefed up the bullpen, and they relied on their current crop of starters. Unfortunately, Kodai Senga, a little, not so great. Last night, he showed some promise in the fourth inning. His velocity has ticked up a bit. Then, obviously, you got Sean Manaea's big issues. And, Sean Manaea, I don't think there's any coincidence that Jonah Tong was brought up hours before Sean Manaea's start. And I said this last night on my stream, if Sean Manaea didn't show that he could get MLB players out, we would see Jonah Tong here sooner rather than later. Well, folks, it was extremely sooner because hours before the game, David Stearns, Carlos Mendoza, we're going to get to their comments momentarily, but they've raved about this kid. He has dominated on every single damn level. AAA, 2 games, dominating. AA, bunch of games, completely dominating. And, folks, the fact of the matter, it's just not that this kid has been good. He has been embarrassing AAA hitters. And what the Mets saw, what Nolan McLean did, and how he was evaluated, Nolan McLean is a problem right now for MLB players. He is a problem, folks. Jonah Tong, I fully believe he will be a problem as well. He's getting comparisons to former Cy Young Award winners, MLB All-Stars. It's not just, he's a top prospect. Let's compare him to an all-time great. No, it's his stuff. It's his makeup. It's about how he's going to project. This kid is not just a regular prospect. That's why I'm super excited to see how it pans out. And it should be very positive things for us New York Mets fans. I just want to show you this really quick because now people may be wondering, how does the pitching staff look like? Well, right now we have McLean, Tong, Peterson, Holmes. You got Senga. Senga deserves another appearance after yesterday. It wasn't great, but he's shown flashes of improvement. You have Manaea and you have McGill. So a few short weeks ago, our rotation was it was Peterson and who else? You got Holmes, can't go past the 4th, 5th inning, and Manaea looked like a joke. Senga wasn't anything to brag about. So right now, you got a top 3 now. If Tong is anything like McLean, you're talking about a top of the rotation of McLean, Tong, Peterson, and then you got 4 guys to fill out 2 spots. And then when you go in the playoffs, you're probably going to go to a 4-man rotation anyway. So the Mets are showing you right now that they have a whole bevy of pitching to take care of the starting spots. A couple weeks ago, no good options. Now you're seeing there's some viable options. And why not? I said it a couple weeks ago. You want the most talented roster that you can assemble to do some damage now and in the playoffs. This is the same exact quote that David Stearns said today. I want to assemble the most talent I can on this roster. And that's why you got a guy in Tong who is major league ready, who has, again, I can't emphasize this enough. He has been embarrassing AAA hitters former major league hitters. He has been just making people look silly. His numbers are gaudy. In his last pitching performance, I want to get his most recent one. 6 innings pitched, 5 hits, 0 runs, 8 Ks. He threw 88 pitches. And out of the 88 pitches, this is the most amazing thing. He threw 63 strikes. 63 out of 88 pitches. His fastball in his last performance topped out at 97.6 miles per hour. So far in AAA, 11.2 scoreless innings, 17 strikeouts, and 39 swing and misses in just 2 starts. 39 swing and misses. And this is what I'm talking about. This kid isn't just being good. He is dominating, completely dominating. So that's what the Stearns and Mendoza philosophy. For you to be promoted, you want to make sure the prospect is dominating AA, dominating AAA. All right, MLB experience. And, this was not the plan. I mean, this is not the plan. Get the kid 2 starts at AAA. But the fact of the matter is, Manaya and Senga have literally forced the hand of Stearns. I guarantee they wanted to be a bit more conservative. But right now, down the stretch, there is no, hey, give the guy 2 or 3 more starts. No, you just saw Nolan McLean win you 2 games. That rookie won you 2 games. Plus, not to mention, he inspired the offense. He inspired the ball club. And, that's what talent does, folks. That is what talent does. I mean, I go back to Little League. When I see these kids that were just amazing, wow, that made you want to be amazing. And that's what McLean did. And we are creating something special. It almost reminds me of 10 years ago when we had DeGrom, Harvey, Wheeler, Syndergaard, and even Steven Matz. I mean, we're creating some semblance of that. Now, Brandon Sproat, okay, he a little behind in development. His appearance in the bullpen gave up a few runs. He pitched 3 2/3. Not so great. But when the Mets geared him or switched him off to the bullpen, that was basically the writing on the wall. You knew Jonah Tong was going to be the next man up to fill in a start for the starting rotation. So very, very good stuff, folks. Very good stuff. Again, I want to start saying hello to everyone. Hobby, I said hello, but again, you're great. You always got great stuff in the comments. I love you. Daniel, Mr. Positivity, how's it going? Will, you may be the opposite, but I'm going to try to get you back on that train. Kevin, how's it going? Skip, great day. You know what, folks? This is not only a great day, in my opinion, this is a historic day. These last couple weeks where you bring up Nolan McLean and you bring up Jonah Tong, that's the future, folks. That is the future, and it's starting to look bright. It's starting to actually be clear why a guy like David Stearns didn't give up a bunch of top prospects for a Sandy Alcantara. I mean, how silly would that have been? Marlins wanted Jet Williams. They wanted a couple top 5 prospects. They probably wanted a Jonah Tong or a Nolan McLean for a guy like Sandy Alcantara. And people were upset that you didn't make that move. Well, folks, that would have been PCA, Pete Crow Armstrong version 2.0 if a move like that was made. Or even trading away on Mark Vientos for that matter. But again, now we have the Strikeout King, the electric fastball, the dominating nasty curve. This kid, is he the missing piece? Could he be the missing piece? Getting 2 elite arm talents of Jonah Tong and Nolan McLean injected into the end of your rotation in August. If you look at how things work, this is pretty rare. This is pretty rare that you have a team in the midst of a pennant race able to inject 2 top end of the rotation caliber pitchers. I mean, Spencer Strider came up a couple years ago. I don't know what his deal was and when he came up, but I just don't remember so many scenarios where you had the chips in your farm system that were MLB ready. So if you get another kid, and it looks like from all signs that this kid is going to be dominating elite at the major league level. That's just all the more impressive if you want to give Stearns that credit. Okay, so let's just get a little more into Jonah Tong. So Mendoza, what did Mendoza say about him? So first, before I say that, it looks like Jonah Tong, he will be making his MLB debut at Citi Field against the Miami Marlins. I like that. At Citi Field, the crowd will be going nuts. Him getting swing and misses, striking out guys at Citi Field on a Friday night. It will be insane, folks. Insane. So, all right, what did Mendoza say about him? So Mendoza goes, I think it's all about him dominating in the minor leagues. Dominating. Again, like his words, not mine. So Mendoza said about the decision to promote Tong. So you would make a case, all right, he's AA. Do you want to give him a better look? Only after 2 starts in AAA? But man, after just a couple outings, it's hard to keep him there. He is here, and it is now. So Tong was a 7th round draft pick in 2022. People talk, teams talk, they want to get the top picks in the draft. It doesn't really matter. If you draft correctly, you could find talent all over the place. DeGrom was a late round draft pick. Tong is a 7th round draft pick. He's one of the top breakout prospects in the minors. The kid has a 143 ERA and 180 strikeouts in 113 innings. Again, the kid has a 1.43 ERA, 180 strikeouts in 114 innings, mostly at AA. But really, those 180 strikeouts led the whole minors. And not only did he lead the minors, it was 32 more strikeouts than the next highest strikeout pitcher. This kid, I'm telling you, is dominating the level. So Tong struck out almost 41% of the batters he faced. 41% of the batters he's faced. I'm pretty sure as he goes along, the Mets are going to tell him in certain situations where you don't want to run up your pitch count. Hey, you may want to pitch to some more contact, but early on, you want to see how he fares against MLB players. Okay. All right, so comments from David Stearns. So David Stearns goes, as you roll into the last month of the season, you want to have the best roster you possibly can. Mets president of baseball operations, David Stearns, told reporters on Tuesday, we think Jonah has a chance to be among that. So Jonah Tong, he was the Mets' 2nd best prospect, and he was the 44th best prospect in baseball. So I'll give you a little tiny info scouting report on him. Let me close that out. All right, so we're going to get into a more advanced breakdown, but here's just a short snippet. So Tong is a 6'1" kid, and you've heard the comparison. A lot of people are comparing him to Tim Lincecum because of his build, because of the fact that he looks deceptively slim, but he is very, very powerful with the fastball. His fastball can go up to 98. Some people have said 99. So he's got a decent, very velocity fastball, not decent, elite. His fastball averages around 94 miles per hour, but it plays well above that with an induced vertical break. The induced vertical break from StatCast has it breaking 20 inches. 20 inches. He plays off of that with a 74 to 76 mile per hour curveball. And, this is the thing I don't get. A lot of pitchers, changing speeds is an art, right? Changing speeds is an art. There's a lot of fireballers. They throw 98, 99, but then they have a secondary pitch that's close to 90 miles per hour. And the change of speed is only 7, 8 miles per hour. MLB hitters, they can time that. But this kid has a 74 mile per hour nasty curve, and he has a 98 mile per hour fastball. The difference in velocity is very good, very insane. So the 76 to 74 mile per hour curveball, it has 65 inches of vertical drop. 65 inches of vertical drop, which is insanely nasty. He also has an 82 to 84 mile per hour cut slider that he developed in early 2024, which has really helped him take his next step. And he also has an 84 to 86 mile per hour changeup, and they have here that he throws it with Vulcan grip. Apologize, not sure what that means, but it sounds pretty nasty. Okay. I'm not sure if I want to read this concern. So there's some concern that the more advanced batters can lay off his north to south approach and that his unorthodox delivery will be difficult to maintain as he ages. But you know what? That's where you have pitching coaches. That's where you have analytics. And that's where, the pitching lab should be able to help him age gracefully. The kid's only 22 years old too. That not to mention he's 2 years in terms of age behind Nolan McLean. So now you have Nolan McLean, you summon him. Nolan McLean has been dominating. He's allowed 2 runs, 15 strikeouts in almost 13 innings. Brandon Sproat, we mentioned earlier, he was shifted to the bullpen. So it looks like, the Mets may want to get him another 1 or 2 performances in the bullpen, get him a little more comfortable, and then we may eventually see him up here in the bullpen as well. Okay. And, again, the New York is in the midst of a 16 games, 16 days stretch. So, we need fresh arms. So very, very, very exciting, folks. How are we all feeling? I don't want to understate this. I think that this is historic. I remember thinking 2013, 2014, 2013, Harvey comes up. 2014, you have DeGrom come up. And then, you have Syndergaard, Wheeler, Matz. We've waited so long to have a young farm system generated starting rotation. It's been forever. And when Steve Cohen took over this team, he learned very quickly that you're going to have to develop these arms in the rotation. Way too expensive and too much risk to pay them. We had that experience with Verlander, with Scherzer, and then you see the crazy pitching ass Max Fried. You got to give him 8 years, $220 million or $218 million. It's just way too risky. Now the Mets want to develop themselves as a factory. You got 6 years, low paid. You pay these guys on the lower end because, obviously they won't be free agents for 6 years. Then once those 6-year period comes, you'll see the next crop of arms. Besides Sproat, besides Tong, besides McLean, the New York Mets have a slew of other talented young arms. So again, you got to give Stearns credit. You got to give Cohen credit. Because this is the system they are developing. We'll pay some high-priced bats. The lineup, folks, how we feel about the lineup now? The lineup is looking and clicking a lot better on more cylinders. Everybody who wanted to trade away Mark Vientos, come on, folks. We got to be realistic. This kid, as I said at the deadline, as a lot of people, agreed, he's special. It's rare, and the fact that makes him special is he does it under pressure. Okay, so again, let's get more about Jonah Tong. Kevin, why are we bringing up Sproat for the bullpen? Well, it's going to go toward what David Stern said. Right now, you want to assemble the roster with the most possible talent, right? So right now we have bullpen arms. We brought up Castillo. You got Static. Reed Garrett, he went on the DL, so he's a guy that's not there. So, if they deem that Sproat is a better talent than a guy like Castillo, which, Castillo, he's going to have his moments, but I think Sproat's overall ability is going to surpass. He's a guy who can come in for 3-4 innings. He's a guy that, hey, in the 8th inning, you have like a very big matchup. He's got a 100-mile-per-hour heater. He's got some decent secondary pitchers. His talent ceiling is higher than some of the guys that you currently have in the bullpen. I'm not saying he's better than a Diaz. I'm not saying he's on that level, but some of the lower end relievers, it's nice to have a talented guy like Sproat. In the rotation, as I mentioned, the rotation is filling up. The rotation right now, if you keep Tong in the rotation, which I believe, he's going to prove he's worthy, you have McLean, Tong, Peterson. That top three should be pretty much set. And then the next two spots, you got four guys now, and some of these guys can be in the bullpen. The Mets right now, a couple weeks ago, you're like, we're not going to have, we don't have the arms to fill the innings because you got the starters going so short. But now you're having a different problem. You're having a different problem where you have a bunch of pitchers. You're going to have Sanger, Manaya, McGill, Holmes for two spots at the end of the rotation. Or the Mets, since they're playing a lot of games, they could go to a six-man. And then, McGill hasn't been back yet, but I believe he's ready to return very, very soon. But you're going to have a good problem to have, Buzz, what's up? This goes up there with Doc, DeGrom, Harvey, Wheeler. Let's get into Generation K, but this is exciting. Oh, let's not get into Generation K. Of course not. You know what thing? We got to see how it really pans out. But the thing is, there's a lot of hope and there's a lot of excitement because the talent that these kids have, we haven't seen it since those names that you mentioned. Doc, DeGrom, Harvey, Wheeler to an extent. Wheeler developed like kind of the last year and a half before he became a free agent, but he had his injuries, but he was always very, very talented. But how exciting, how much energy that these guys inject. Doc in the mid 80s. I didn't really see it, but I watched the old videos and you see Shea Stadium rocking. I remember DeGrom, the DeGrom days. It was just so exciting going when you knew that you had such a dominating presence on that mound. And now the great thing about this team, as opposed to 10 years ago, is we have a very dynamic offense. We didn't have 4 or 5 all-stars. We had Cespedes, we had Daniel Murphy, we had Michael Conforto as a rookie. So, that was the middle of our lineup back then. The middle of our lineup now is, I believe, better, but our lineup is much, much longer. And you have homegrown prospects injected in the lineup, Vientos, Beatty, and then you're getting production from your Luis Torrens, like that, upper level offensive production. Yesterday was just insane. And then you literally smack around your division rival, the Phillies. I mean, last night and into today, this is probably the best feelings that I've had in a month. Probably since we acquired some bullpen help. I haven't felt this good since then. Hopefully we continue it. Hopefully, Manaya doesn't kill the momentum, but I still feel like we could sweep this series. We got to get past tonight. Tonight's the key game. Tonight is the key game. And then tomorrow, remember, we got Nolan McLean. That's what a good pitcher does. They make the day before, they make that game much more important. And they know if we can win today, we can extend the winning streak because we got Nolan McLean tomorrow. And then on Friday, we got Jonah Tong. So, it's just so much more exciting to look forward to games too, because, having this elite pitching. But, it's a great feeling. It is such a great feeling. All right, so I want to get into some more of the repertoire, the pitches, and what makes this kid super, super special. Okay. Okay, so another reason why they kind of compare him to Lincecum is that he has a very deceptive, over the top delivery. You know, the picture that I have on my thumbnail, you kind of see how he rears back, but that his delivery even resembles. He's got the deceptive, over the top delivery, and that also helps him generate a standout vertical movement and deception. So it really kind of helps him be more deceptive to the hitters. So the fastball, again, you know, you look at different scouting reports and they tell you different miles per hour. You know, this particular scouting report says that his fastball sits in the mid 90s and that he touches 97 mile per hour on occasion. And he has that elite vertical ride. And MLB graded his fastball at 65 out of 80. So that is, you know, considered toward elite of the fastball category. Again, the sharp curveball is 74 to 76 mile per hour and has that 65 vertical drop. And, you know, this is how the scouting grades are. And I'm not really a huge believer in these grades, but they grade his fastball as his best pitch as a 65, his curveball a 55, his slider a 45, a changeup 55, control 45, overall 55. To me, that doesn't really mean much, but that's just how the grades go. Okay, so his strikeout ability, we've all said that he's elite with the strikeout. His whiff rates are insane, and he is a swing and miss machine. So even if he does surrender a couple hits, he is a guy that he could just strike out the next two or three batters and leave, you know, a situation like second and third, bases loaded. He's the perfect guy on the mound because his stuff, again, is that nasty. So he's rated as a 4-pitch arsenal. And you know, again, I said that the difference in his velocity, it really keeps batters off balance. His control, to be honest, historically, he's had some walk issues, but in 2025, he has become noticeably better. And I think that has helped him really fly through the ranks. Control is huge. Control is a huge thing. And as I said, in his last AAA start, almost 80% of the pitches that he threw were strikes. So we see that his control has gotten a lot better. And wow, everywhere you read, everybody says Tim Lincecum, Tim Lincecum, Tim Lincecum. You know, I mean, if his high ceiling meets the high ceiling of Tim Lincecum, that's great. We just want him to maintain it for much, much longer. Come here. Come here. Sorry, I have my dog in the room. I gotta let her out, or else she's gonna mess up everything. Come on. This is my dog. My wife just came home, so the dog's gonna go nuts if I don't let her out of the room. But she's very excited that the Mets got Jonah Tong, right? You're a big Met fan. All right, dog, out of the room. Oh, Hobby, you had a cat and you named him Mookie? Wow, that's actually pretty cool. That's a good name for a cat. Actually, I had a friend I went to school with. His name was Mookie. He was named after Mookie from the Mets. All right, so let's get into some of what some of the scouts have said. Okay, so one scout, this is his words, and this is a scout from another team. And this is what I did with Nolan McLean. I wanted to hear what opposing scouts said about Nolan. And this is what some scouts said about Jonah. So they said that their word, blossoming into a bona fide ace. And that's what you want to hear. A lot of times, how do these guys project? Are they going to be a number 3, a number 4, a number 5? But him, they're saying that he's going to be a bona fide ace. Scouts and industry observers has praised him as being one of the most dominating pitchers in affiliated baseball. His 1.58 ERA, strikingly high K per 9, 14.29 strikeouts per 9 inning, and extremely low batting average. Folks, this is extremely dominating. His batting average against is 141. 141 at AA. So this indicates usually top end dominance, which he portrayed. Again, every single scouting report compares him to Tim Lincecum. But again, for you to have dominating stuff and for you to throw deception on top of it, that's why they compare him to Lincecum, because he has a deceptive delivery. And, you got a dominating, talented arsenal and you have deception. I mean, there's some pitchers who have a mediocre pitching repertoire, but they're very deceptive. So their stuff plays up. But he already has dominating stuff, and he has other, factors like his delivery that really help his overall production. And the deception, his upper 90s fastball, that improves the changeup. It's harder to see. And this scout literally says he's a stud pitching prospect, and his fastball is nearly unhittable. The sheer quality of his heater is unmatched. Well, I mean, that is just phenomenal to hear. Again, this is an opposing scout saying this. And he also says that the New York Mets have a potential stud pitching trio of McLean, Jonah Tong, and he even threw Brandon Sproat in there. And again, this is an opposing team's scout. So in the MLB futures game, Tong, he was very impressive as well. He topped off at 97.4 miles per hour, and he was able to showcase his full repertoire to everybody at that point. But this kid really, really started to open eyes, I would say, mid last year. That's when he really started to elevate up the Mets top rankings. And then he just continued to dominate. Okay. So in my opinion, against the Marlins, a team like the Marlins, I'm going to expect this kid to be lights out. MLB, usually when they have a pitcher of this level, it takes them a couple games to really adjust. Then Jonah Tong and the New York Mets, they will have to adjust and adapt. But based on this kid's stuff, if he doesn't have the nerves, and it's good he's at Citi Field, you get a little bit of a comfort level. But, anybody, I mean, what Nolan did a couple weeks ago in his first outing, that's rare. I would expect the kid to have some butterflies. I would expect some control issues. But, his talent will ultimately, you'll see it come through the TV, or if you're at Citi Field, you'll see it come through because the kid is ultra talented. But I expect a very, very good game from him. I expect him to have a couple good games. Then, like I said, teams will adjust, hitters will adjust, and then the New York Mets will have to make adjustments. Jonah Tong, obviously him, the pitcher himself, will have to make adjustments, but it's going to be ultra fun. It's going to be ultra fun having this duo and possibly trio if Brandon Sproat comes in and, down the stretch, we were able to inject multiple top end arms into this team. And then, you also have, if Kodai Senga ever, figures out what he was doing in the beginning of this year and in the past, that's also another weapon. If Sean Manaea shows you anything, that's another weapon. And again, focus on tonight's game. If you see Sean Manaea and he looks more like the Sean Manaea of last year, I think that his problem was more or less mental. The guy needed to be inspired. The guy needed to be pushed. Last year, he was very motivated. The guy was pitching for a contract. So every outing was immensely important. This year, he got paid. A lot of times when guys get paid, they lose motivation. Hey, how can you motivate a guy? Well, you motivate a guy by potentially taking his job away. And that's why, again, I think it was very, very important. I think the Mets, a couple hours before Manaea's start, you bring up a guy like Jonah Tong. I mean, that sends a huge message to a guy like Sean Manaea. Like, I don't care how much we're paying you. You perform or the next guy steps up. So that's also going to be very interesting to see the Mets today. And Javi, I always forget this kid. I mean, last year I was raving about him. Christian Scott, he should be back next year. But you're right. You're 100% right. Christian Scott is also another young arm that the New York Mets will have next year. I mean, look at the rotation next year. It's going to be extremely exciting. Imagine a whole year of these kids. Jonah Tong, Nolan McLean, David Peterson. It's going to be his last year. I still hope the New York Mets could work something out to extend him because I think that he's finally coming into his zone. So if you lock this guy up, it looks like we're going to have a very nice homegrown rotation. I mean, that's going to feel very good. Manaea is going to start coming up big. Well, you know what? That'll be really good for the Mets. That'll be good for Mets fans. That'll benefit everybody. I love the guy. I have nothing against Manaea. It's just that I've just seen him look so damn hittable. His fastball, he couldn't control. His his secondary pitchers having just as much trouble. 2 games ago, the sweeper, he said he should have do the sweeper more often. I relied too much on the fastball. So then this game, the most recent last game, he threw the sweeper more, but that didn't work. And then the fastball, he couldn't control the fastball after the first 3 innings. So 3 innings is not good enough. If you're a starter, you got to be able to go at least 5 or 6. And we'll see. You can't go 3 innings and then turn into one of the most hittable pitchers in MLB. What's up, Miguel? Santucci and Thornton, they are in Double-A now along with Wenninger. Yeah, I mean, we went over the top 30 Mets prospects. The Mets, out of the top 26 prospects, I believe have 12 pitchers out of the top 26. So the Mets in their farm have a whole slew of pitching prospects. And when you look at all their pitching prospects, they got fireballers, they got guys who are changeup specialists, they got lefties, they got righties. So they have very different guys with different stuff. But the important thing is a lot of these guys, a lot of their pitchers are performing well. All of them are performing well in the minors. So you have a lot of these guys excelling at the levels that they're on. So according to David Stearns, many of these guys are going to continue to move up the ranks toward MLB. So again, that's going to be very exciting. Santucci is a guy that, I've been excited about him, but it's hard to get excited about the 4th or 5th option when you have a bunch of other guys like McLean, Tong, and Sproat in your face right now that you should be ultra excited about. Developing your own talent is cheaper than free agency. I mean, that's probably the number one thing to develop your own talent because of how damn expensive these free agents are, these pitching free agents, and the fact that there's so much risk. I mean, that's why, that's why uh, the Garrett Crochet trade, I believe, didn't come through. The Mets had to give up prospects, give up a Jet Williams plus. They wanted Jet Williams plus, and then you got to sign this guy. You got to give him money, and then the guy has to stay healthy. There were just too many buts and ifs and risks with that. So, David Stearns looking at his farm. Well, I got Nolan McLean, I got Brandon Sproat, I got Jonah Tong. Okay, I'm good. I'm good for this year. And, you have to adapt. Like, I believe that the plan was a little altered. Like, I think that Brandon Sproat was supposed to be the first guy. He was supposed to be the first guy that the New York Mets went to, but the guy faltered in the beginning of the year. And the Mets said, we're not promoting any guy that is not successful in a level that they are. You want to make sure they're comfortable, that they can thrive at that level, then you promote them. So Brandon Sproat got off to a rocky start. Then he fine-tuned, a couple things, better control, and he was able to have positive results. But at the end of the day, Nolan McLean had a better makeup, overall makeup, better stuff, better along with the development. You bring him up, and Jonah Tong is just a phenom, a freaking phenom. So, that's why Brandon Sproat ultimately got passed up. And I still feel that we're going to see Sproat in some capacity in the near future. Again, probably in the bullpen. Yeah, Miguel. Dylan Ross is another name. Dylan Ross is a kid. The guy could throw 102 miles per hour, folks. Dylan Ross is another guy. I think he's like the 22nd Mets prospect. Good point, Miguel. Wow, you're familiar. You're familiar with the Mets prospects. That's good. Now, again, what does this do? Like, we are in a race with the Reds, right? So you got the Reds facing the Dodgers, and we went over it last night. The Reds, it's not going to be a cakewalk for them. They have the third toughest schedule down the stretch. They have the third toughest schedule. I mean, depending on where you look, it'll be the fifth toughest, the second toughest. But just at the end of the day, the Reds have a tough schedule. Right now, they got 2 more games with the Dodgers. They're going to be playing the Padres. They're going to be playing the Cubs. They're going to be playing the Brewers. They're going to be playing the Blue Jays. So down the stretch, although our schedule is difficult as well, their schedule is tough. And their top pitchers, a couple of their top pitchers have had a couple rough outings. Juxtapose that with our pitching staff. We're trying to get our pitching staff right. Now, when you inject two guys at the top of the rotation, takes stress off of everyone else. But most of all, it takes stress off of the damn bullpen. That's what's been going on in this last winning stretch. Well, we won 6 out of our last 9. We haven't had to rely so heavily on the bullpen. Now, last game, we had to rely heavily on the bullpen, but the bullpen was more well rested. You had offensive production, and that takes pressure off the bullpen. So there's many things that take pressure off the bullpen. If your offense scores a bunch of runs, that takes pressure off the bullpen. If your starting rotation goes deeper into the game, that takes pressure off of the bullpen. If that happens over a series of a bunch of games, now your bullpen is restored fully to health, and you can utilize your bullpen in games like yesterday, where they had to go 5 innings and gave up 0 runs against a supposed dynamic offense in the Phillies. So that's why yesterday I was so super excited. And I was also anticipating the Mets calling up Jonah Tong or Brandon Sproat. I love the young kids coming up. I really do. You want to see your farm system, what they produce. You see that on the field. And, the Mets have a lot of homegrown guys, even around the diamond. Tommy, you're right. Is there a hitter that the Metropolitans could call up? Well, I think they're hitting right now. They're fine. I mean, I think they're fine. I mean, they just promoted Ryan Clifford, a guy like that from AA to AAA a couple of weeks ago. He was actually promoted, I believe, the same day Jonah Tong was promoted. So, that's a guy, but, you got Jet Williams. He was promoted the same day. So those are some top prospects, Jet Williams, Ryan Clifford. It's just hard to really see how those guys are going to fit, because where would Jet Williams play? He would take time away from, Brett Beatty, Mark Vientos, unless one of those guys just falls off a cliff, because then also you have Ronnie Mauricio. And then if you look in the outfield, Jeff McNeil, Cedric Mullins, there's just really no room for an extra bat unless somebody got hurt. If a Pete Alonso, I don't want to say it, but if something happened to somebody of that stature, then I could see, all right, you might need a Ryan Clifford. But as of right now, I don't think the Mets are going to be messing around too much with the offense. Don't mess with something that's not broken. The Mets in August have the second best OPS, as they stated on the Mets telecast yesterday. And the Mets, in almost every single offensive category, are in the top 3 in the last couple weeks. So again, I don't see the Mets really messing around with something that's not broken, unlike the starting rotation, which was extremely broken and needed some tweaking. And that's why they focused most of their attention on that. Oh, how is Clifford with the glove? So it's really tough when the guys in the minor leagues, especially a first baseman. I remember when Pete Alonso was in the minors, they kind of touted his abilities as not being good. Kind of the same thing with Clifford. They rate him as a below average guy. He came up as a guy who could play first base, also a guy who could play a corner outfield. His arm grades, MLB rates his arm grades as 55 out of 80, so that's not bad. They give him a 45 out of 80 fielding, which is very mediocre. Very mediocre. So again, he's a first baseman, corner outfielder. His arm would be considered above average. But he's a guy that I think, is really hailed for his bat. He can play corner outfield. He can be a serviceable first baseman. He's got a decent arm. His speed is fringy. He's not the best athlete. It's just that his arm is probably his best asset on the defensive side. He needs a little more work from the defensive side. That's my opinion. He needs more work. But that's natural. I mean, that's really natural. Same thing with Pete Alonso. Not the best athlete, great offensive player, but over time, if this guy's a pro's pro, which he seems to be, young kid, he'll get better. Miguel, you're right. We could call up Jet Williams, but he has slowed down a bit once reaching AAA. Our offense is good enough to win as is, in my opinion. I think right now, status quo with the offense is going to be the best thing, unless somebody gets hurt, or I think even if somebody slumps, we just have a couple other candidates. But Jet, you're right. So Jet, we moved up A couple weeks ago, he got promoted to AAA. So about 2 weeks ago, from AA Binghamton. In AA, really good. 96 games. He slashed 281 batting average. Great. I mean, that's good. 281 these days is like almost a 300 batting average compared to years ago. But the good thing is he had a 390 on base. So he's always been a high on base guy. His slug 477, 10 home runs, 32 stolen bases, and he had almost a 900 OPS. Actually 867. I was exaggerating. So the good thing is he's a guy that is a good hitter, very solid hitter. He's got speed, but he's also a versatile guy. You could play the guy shortstop, second base. They even looking at Jet in center field before, they got Mullins. Could he be a center field solution at the end of the year? But Williams has really shown elite athleticism. He's got a smooth adaptability. So again, he could play all over the place. And you put him in center, he looks like a natural. You put him at second, he looks like a natural. He's one of those guys where you can plug him in every part around the diamond, and wow, the kid looks like he's been playing there his whole life. Now, the thing is with Jet Williams, and this is, I think, the reason why we haven't seen him is he got delayed last year. He had that wrist injury. He had the wrist injury, and that really derailed his whole 2024 season. Now, Jet Williams, part of this year's progress was reestablishing himself as one of the top tier prospects in 2025. And, I think he's done that. I really do think he's done that. His average is good. He's got the speed there. He's playing all around the diamond. I think he's a guy that is going to be here sooner rather than later. It's just that right now it's about timing. Like, is there a spot for him? It just doesn't really look like it. I mean, in September, could he get a cup of coffee? It's possible. I mean, that's definitely possible. But more realistically, he seems probably going to be more of a fixture in the 2026 season. I mean, like next year, if you project next year, you got Cedric Mullins, who's going to be a free agent. So he's not going to be here next year. The Mets center field, what are they going to do? Are they going to sign a center fielder, maybe a veteran, a backup player? And they say, hey, one of the young kids, you go out there, win the position. Jet Williams, Carson Bench, that position possibly can go to them. But, the Mets probably are going to sign some sort of veteran presence out there as well. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's another position that they allow one of the young kids to win. Yeah, Starling Marte, I think, this is his last year. 2022, 2023, 24. Yeah, so he signed a 4-year contract. So Marte, he's going to be a free agent. Buzz, you're right. Mauricio should be sent down. He's not ready. He should not be rotting on the bench. See, that's the huge question. I mean, huge question is, do you want to have a young kid in the MLB getting very sparing playing time, or would you rather have him play every single day in the minors? I mean, that situation is, the big question that teams have been asking for years and years and years. But, I think the fact of the matter, isn't the season, I believe the season's over. I'm just checking when the minors end. Oh, actually, you know what? It goes a little towards the end of September. So, all right, yeah, I mean, it's an option if you want to send the kid down for a couple more weeks in. But he's a tough one because a couple of weeks ago, Mauricio looked to be the guy that you were going to plug in, and then also too, Mauricio is a superior defender too. So he's not doing well offensively. He's looking really, really pedestrian, especially from the right side of the plate. But that's going to be a call that Mendoza and Stearns really have to come together. What's going to be the best for this team and for this kid's future? I think Mauricio is trade bait in the end of the season to make room for Jet as our infield is too crowded. That's a definite possibility. I mean, the Mets right now are going to have a crowded situation, very crowded. I mean, even if you inject the Carson Bench in there too, Carson Bench, he's a future prospect. I mean, you already have Nimmo in the outfield. You already have Soto in the outfield. So you got one position in the outfield, and that's why I don't think the Mets are going to spend big on a center fielder, because you need a spot for Carson Bench. You need a spot for Jet Williams. And then, let's just say third base, you give, third base, let's just say Mark Vientos, Brett Beatty. You're gonna have a position, because then second base would be available. But if you trade away Mauricio, it depends what you're getting back. I'm not giving him away. But it just gives the Mets more options. Yeah, Buzz. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm pretty sure the Mets would want to have Jet Williams at second base. But you got Williams. Let's just say this: you want to have the best defense or a better defense. So if you want to have Mauricio out of the equation, you put Beatty at third. He's a better defender than Vientos, obviously. You have Vientos at DH. You have Jet Williams at second base. Buzz. That's a good point. And then you have obviously Lindor at short. You have Carson Bench at center. You have Soto. You have Soto in the outfield, right field, and then you have Nimmo in left. And then let's see what happens with Pete Alonso. I think that's what the Mets do in those type of situations. Kind of will dictate which prospects they can and will trade. X is funny, formerly Twitter is really funny. So a lot of the commentary right now, when the Mets bring up McClain, now they bring up obviously Jonah Tong. They have like a picture of like Kodai Senga and Sean Manaea with like these scary faces. But at the end of the day, those two guys, they have a lot of pressure on themselves to maintain some type of semblance of getting MLB players out. Kodai Senga yesterday wiggled out of that big jam again in the fourth inning. Aras, it could have looked horrible. He could have had a horrible stat line and left the Mets in a very bad situation where it would have been difficult to win the game. But again, Sean Manaea is going to be exciting to watch him tonight. And again, I think I have to predict we're going to see a better version of Sean Manaea. Again, I think he's a guy, in my opinion, he's a guy that needs to be motivated. He's a guy that needs to be inspired to pitch at a high level. Last year, again, he was pitching for a contract. That was motivation enough. When he was in Oakland, he was like a number 4 or number 5 starter. Wasn't pitching at really that high level that he did the last 2 or 3 months of last year. Let's see if the New York Mets, maneuverability of getting Jonah Tong a couple hours before the Manaea start. Let's see what type of effect that has on Manaea. Now, if he's straight garbage tonight against the Phillies, the same Philly offense that was stymied and shut down last night, then the Mets have like a very, I don't want to say difficult decision, but they're going to have a decision to make about Manaea. What's up, Stanley? Sproat is next. Yeah, it kind of Sproat has been passed up 2 times right now. He's been passed up 2 times, but it makes sense. He's been passed up by two elite options. I definitely do think the next spot will be for Sproat. Yeah, I'm hoping for the best for Manaea. The better, the more options the Mets have, especially a lefty. I mean, it's good to give a different look to lineups in a series. You got Peterson and you got Manaea. Those are your lefties. So it's good to have two lefties in the rotation. Okay, so again, this is all about the Mets building a team for the playoffs, right? This is all about, we go back to the comments David Stearns made today. You want to promote, or you want to have the most talent on a team that you can assemble, right? So right now, down the stretch, you're going to have, he's pitched in the minors, but more or less, you're going to have a fresh, dominant arm. The Mets rotation, as we know, they've been very thin. They've been very inconsistent. You promote a kid who's been nothing more than the most consistent kid in all of AAA. So and also too, the swing and miss stuff is very, very good. Very good. If he gets into situations, down the stretch, again, you can get out of big jams with swing and miss stuff. The fastball curve combo is something that is elite, and it can neutralize any lineup. The curve, as I mentioned, is a 20 mile per hour differential from the fastball, actually more than 20 mile per hour. So he's going to really be able to keep hitters off balance. And then, this is the thing that I said right off the top, it gives you rotational flexibility. Ability. Sorry about that. You have options now. Senga, constantly inconsistent. He had injuries. The Mets had other guys. Obviously, we mentioned Manaea inconsistent, but now you got that extra depth to the rotation. You take stress off of the bullpen, but you also give the bullpen insurance. The guys who aren't in the rotation, McGill can come back. He can be a fresh arm in the bullpen. Manaea, if Manaea is not working out a starter, now he can be another lefty option out of the bullpen. And now look at the bullpen. If that happens, we had trouble in the past having one lefty option. So for the first time, we're going to have multiple. And that's fine too as well, because down the stretch, if you're going to be playing teams like the Phillies, they have lefty bats, Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper, those big backs you got to get out. The Dodgers, of course, they have Ohtani. Well, that's going to be tough. Lefty, righty, doesn't matter. But, it might give you that extra lethal weapon, that extra dominance. Three lefties out of the bullpen, that's pretty nice. And then, I would say one of the biggest things that has helped the Mets in the last couple weeks is the mental aspect, the psychological aspect, the sparking of the clubhouse. You've seen it's tangible. You see it from the TV screen. You see it when you go to Citi Field. The players are happy. One of the things I saw last night that stood out to me is when Ryan Helsley had that perfect, kind of perfect inning for Ryan Helsley, but he had that 1-2-3 inning. And, nobody really got any hits. It was a mediocre inning. He had a strikeout, but, he comes into the dugout. Every single damn person gave him a high five, gave him a hug, It's like you won the World Series. And that's what good teams do, good teams with chemistry. And, last couple weeks before McLean came up, we were missing that. And I said over and over, it just doesn't feel the same. I don't feel the same energy, the same vibe. I don't see the same, reactions in the dugout that I saw last year when the Mets had Iglesias, when the Mets were like celebrating. Last year, it was completely different. Now I'm getting that feeling back that I had last year when we made that run. And, moves like this, they spark the team. They give the team new energy. And the clubhouse is really that clubhouse spark. That's, a phenomenon. It's really hard to measure. It really is. But it also shows the team that, we are all in for 2025, right? We're not going to be complacent. We're not going to let Mania fail. We're not going to just let Senga fail. And, that gives the rest of the guys on the roster hope. Like, okay, we're not going to keep losing because these guys are getting high paid. These guys are high paid and the Mets are going to mail it in. No, the team knows now that the organization will do whatever they can to put the best team out there. Also, the energy, not only energy on the field, but you have the energy in the fan base. Citi Field rocking, and that helps the team tremendously. The team feeds off that hype. Now you got the arrival of the Strikeout King, and that's another reason why I'm happy that that's going to happen at Citi Field. That's a special moment between the team, Jonah Tong, the fans, and you get to celebrate that all together at Citi Field. Hobby, you're right. With the talent the Mets have, as far as good young arms, would it change next season's off-season strategy? Well, I think the Mets right now are very cognizant of the fact that they may have found some solutions for next year, right? So also bringing up these guys at the end of this year, proving that they are MOB capable of getting MOB players out. Now, over the offseason, you're not pressured to sign a big arm, the big arms out there, the Dylan Ceases. Everybody has holes. Like even the top arms have holes. Dylan Cease, I don't want to give him a big contract. Ranger Suarez, another free agent, I wouldn't want to give him a contract. There's a couple other big names out there, but every single one, Frambo Valdez, 32 years old, that it gives you more flexibility now that you can just stick with your guys and not have the pressure to, waste your resources on that type of arm. Now you can utilize those resources to beef up another part of your team. Or again, you can make trades. Yeah, it gives you so many more flexible options when the starting pitching rotation has options and has capable weapons. Give a bag to Pete. That's going to be the big question. That is going to be the big question. Now, Pete Alonso, he started this season obviously on a house of fire. I mean, if you go month by month, his stats, they've kind of trailed off a little. But at the end of the day, the most impressive thing to me about Pete Alonso this year, I give him all the credit in the world coming off of a season last year that was very disappointing. But last season, it was disappointing because he didn't really hit with runners in scoring position. When runners were in scoring position, he kind of wilted. This year, he's been very strong with runners in scoring position. So I give him all the credit in the world for bouncing back in that regard. He's got 260 average, 342 on base, 500 slug, 844 OPS, which are all around his career norms. 259 average actually. His averages for career is 250. The home runs are a little down, but again, he's driving in runs. His approach, you could see, has changed. He's adapted a little. So you have that adaptability that you need when players age. He's going to be 31 years old next year. And again, it's going to come down to like how long the contract's going to be. How long? Is he willing to sign a 3-year contract, a 4-year contract, or a 3-year contract with an option? David Stearns, I don't think, is going to change his philosophy of not wanting to give guys in their 30s a long-term contract. I don't think that's going to change. So Pete Alonso and his camp would really have to say, I want to be a Met for life, Let's work it out. Let's work together and figure something out. Because, like I said, I don't think Stearns is going to change his philosophy at all. And this lineup has proved to you that they can produce. They can produce. But and here's my opinion. I love to bring Pete back. I love Pete to continue breaking records and continue being a lifetime Met. That's very special. The Mets fans have a connection with David Wright. We need this generation's version of that. And I would love a guy who has the rookie home run record, the guy who has the Mets home run record, a guy who's been with the Mets through thick and thin, who has been literally the guy has shown how much he loves the fans, all the curtain calls this year, the things he said in interviews. You could see that he really evaluated himself over the offseason. And I think we saw more of the Pete this year that we've seen the previous 4 years, excluding last year. Last year was an anomaly. I think he had a lot of pressure on him. And, I didn't really see the Pete that, we all were accustomed to. This year, we saw more of that Pete. So, I could definitely see the Mets working something out if Pete is willing to come off of that long-term thing. And then also too, Pete, in a couple of years, if you let's say you sign him to a 4-year deal, right? So I think maybe that's where you're going to have to come into agreement. The Mets are probably going to want to give a 3-year deal. He might want a 5-year deal. All right, let's meet in the middle of 4 years, or you might do 3 years and an option for the 4th. But I think it's going to be somewhere in that range. And then also, what is Pete's future going to be? Is he going to be the future DH? But, even if you give him a 3-4 year deal, he'll only be 34, 35. I mean, there's a lot of viable options, a lot of viable first basemen around that age. I think Freddie Freeman's like 30, 35, 36. Not to say he's Freddie Freeman. That guy's, a different guy. Robbie, someone is in here informing. Why haven't we got royalties for this? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Hey, what's up, Johnny? It's hard to replace a slugger like Pete. Yeah, I mean, I think Pete's shown you this year that, he's always been a run producer his entire career. Always been. Like last year was just an anomaly. This year, best on the team, runners in scoring position, Pete Alonso. So, I mean, that's hard to duplicate. That is really hard to duplicate. His whole career driving in runs. I mean, I assume he's probably going to drive in close to 120, maybe more. But, so this is going to be his 4th year where he's driven in at least 118 runs. Let's say he drives in 120 this year. He's driven 118 in 2023, 131 in 2022, and 120 in 2019. I mean, these days it's rare a guy, has so many years of over 100 RBIs. Not only is he driving in over 100 RBIs, he's driving in almost 120 runs a year for multiple consecutive years, except for last year. And then you have the COVID year, that probably could have been another year where Pete drives in over 100, smacks 45 home runs. So he lost out in that year as well. But, he's had a very, very great Mets career. Robbie, only one, let me read what you wrote because I'm getting mixed up. Okay, so this was one of the comments we had last night. Peter Lindor went 1 for 11 last night, and we beat the crap out of the first place team. Unreal. Well, that was on the backs of the 6 through 9 hitters. The 6 through 9 hitters, you had 9 RBIs from. 9 RBIs. You had 11 hits with runners in scoring position. Last night, it was a drubbing. It was a beating. And again, you're 100% right. You did it with Francisco Lindor being 0 for 6 and Pete Alonso being 1 for 5. I mean, that's something you would not expect to put up 13 runs with production from your number one and your number four hitter as being non-existent. Master of Coin, Dom Sproat is next. Yeah, I think, and also too, that what you just said right there is very important. Is very, very important. Sproat is next. Every single Mets pitcher, bullpen, and the starting rotation know they have to pitch at a high level because of the fact that they know the next guy's up. The Mets didn't just promote they're two guys, and this might be a psychological strategy by David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza by not promoting all two or three guys, because in the minds of the Met players, again, there's still another guy. Everybody's got to produce at a high level, or else there is another guy. So I think that mental and psychological aspect is very important to push the rest of the guys to perform at a high level, just like we're going to see Manaea tonight. Robbie, you're right. When do we have to present the playoff roster? Is it September 1st? No, I believe it's before the round. Yeah, usually it's before each round. You have the 26-man active roster, and it could change for each series, but it's definitely not September 1st. It's before each round. I mean, so many things can happen between September 1st and the playoffs. It was a good decision putting McNeil at the bottom of the lineup. Yeah, I kind of like McNeil at the bottom of the lineup. The best lineup, I really like Vientos in the fifth spot, and I really do like McNeil at the bottom of the lineup. He creates that extra dynamic where, he's versatile. If he's a guy you need to get on base, if he's if he needs to, and also too, he's a guy that, you can rely to get hits to move the at bats along, and then getting on base before Torrens gave Torrens the ability to have all those runs produced. I do like McNeil down there. I don't like McNeil in the number fifth spot. I really don't. But Vientos in the fifth spot protecting Pete, I do like. I like that in a big way. Nimmo in the number six position, he did well as well. That lineup that the Mets had yesterday, I mean, the only thing that probably going forward would be something you would have to look at is Marte in the number three spot. The only reason why he was in that number three position is you had a lefty on the mound, Christopher Sanchez. I have to assume he had decent numbers against him, but also Marte has been very, very hot. If he continues to stay hot, he'd be an option for early in the lineup, but and that would be good. But I'm not so sure Marte at 36 is going to be able to be at that red hot level for the duration of the season. All right, I'm going to check out the Mets. I want to check out the Mets lineup tonight. It's so funny. So I didn't even look at the lineup, but I did like the lineup yesterday, and the Mets literally virtually went with the same lineup. Yeah, and you know what? Many people are saying with the Mets that they've been very inconsistent with the lineup. I do like the fact that you duplicate exactly the same thing that worked yesterday. You're facing a lefty today. You got Lindor leading off, Juan Soto number 2, Starling Marte 3, Pete Alonso, Mark Vientos 5, Brandon Nimmo back in that 6th spot, Tyrone Taylor 7, 8 will be Jeff McNeil batting 8th, and Luis Torrens, the red hot Luis Torrens, batting in the 9th spot and catching. So the Mets are, again, duplicating their same exact lineup that was very successful last night. You got Sean Manaea on a hill, 1-2, 5.15 ERA, going against Jesus Luzardo, the lefty from Philly, 12-6 with a 4.10 ERA. And it's going to be, again, like I said, this game, if we can win this game, you know that you have a favorable pitching matchup tomorrow. I believe Taiwan Walker is pitching for the Phillies, if I remember right. And that matchup will favor the Mets. So today, if you win, you have a very high ability, a high likelihood of winning the series. Alvarez was doing his rehab stint. So yeah, Alvarez gives us another option, offensive option. But folks, I'm gonna get going now. I got to get ready kind of before the game. But I'm gonna probably see everybody later on. We got a great game coming up. Everybody enjoy the game. Let's go Mets. Thank you so much for being here. Like before you leave the video, and I will speak to everybody very, very soon. Great stuff. Jonah Tong, the legend, a New York Met.